Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We wanted to be on the steps of the Capitol, and we will do this again soon. We will do it constantly until we pass the DREAM Act. It's an honor to be here with the Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, with a champion on this issue, with the chair of the Hispanic Caucus in the House, Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico, Senator Dick Durbin, who for at least 15, 16 years, is it Senator Durbin, has been a champion of the Dreamers. He first introduced his bill in, 2001, even before 9/11. Congresswoman Lucille Roybal-Allard, who's been a champion on this issue and now serves as the ranking Democrat on the Homeland Security Committee, where she, again, continues her work to be vigilant, protecting our Dreamers. We have newcomers to the Congress, Senator Kamala Harris of California, Representative Castro of Texas, slightly newcomer, and Senator Cortez Masto of Nevada, bringing new invigoration and new energy from their districts, from their states, to this important issue. We all agree that President Trump's decision to end DACA is a despicable act of political cowardice. Cowardice squared because he gave the announcement to his attorney general instead of just making the statement himself. And now he says Congress should act. He had to overturn what President Obama did because it wasn't constitutional or legal, thank you. But if Congress doesn't act, he will do that, constitutional and illegal as he may consider it to be. As I turn over to our special guest here, and I'm so pleased that so many members of the House and Senate are here, let me just say this. President Trump is the first president in 30 years, and let's just go back to Reagan. We can go back further. President Reagan not only acted, he acted after Congress acted. And he said Congress didn't go far enough. So he and then to become President George Herbert Walker Bush, did the family fairness agenda to do more than Congress did. President Clinton followed suit. President George W. Bush was a great immigration president, and we know that President Obama is a great leader, especially concerned about our Dreamers. So this is the first president in modern times, in the lives of these Dreamers, who has been anti-immigration, rejecting the idea that immigration is the lifeblood of our country, the constant reinvigoration of America, and that every newcomer who comes to America with hopes, dreams, aspirations, and optimism and courage makes America more American. In that spirit, I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished Democratic leader of the Senate, the Senator from New York, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader Pelosi. It's not great to be here. We wish we didn't have to be here, but be here we must. And I want to thank the Congressional Hispanic Caucus for organizing this event, and all of my colleagues in the Senate who I would like to mention if I can see them all. Senators Klobuchar, Van Hollen, Merkley, Udall, Heinrich, Blumenthal, Warner, he's tall. Anyone else? So is Heinrich. They're the tall ones, and they modestly stood to the back. But let me say this. I want to cut to the chase. The president's decision to end DACA was heartless and it was brainless. If this order stands, hundreds of thousands of families will be ripped apart. Tens of thousands of American businesses will lose hardworking employees. We're talking about folks who were brought here as children through no fault of their own. They may have known no other country but ours and have voluntarily registered themselves with the government in order to live, work, and give back to our great country. They represent no threat to the country. In fact, in so many ways, the Dreamers represent the best of our country. They want to get right by the law, by serving in the military, going to our schools, working at our companies, contributing to our society, paying their taxes. They risk and sometimes give their lives to protect others in this country, overseas as members of the armed forces, and here at home, like Alonzo Guillen, a DACA recipient who died just last week trying to save others from the unprecedented floodwaters in Texas. So make no mistake, Dreamers contribute greatly to our country, to our businesses, to our economy. A recent study by the Center for American Progress found that 91% of DACA recipients are employed, paying taxes, paying into Social Security. The same study found that ending DACA would drain $433 billion from our national GDP over 10 years. And even the libertarian Cato Institute estimated that ending DACA would cost employers nearly $2 billion over 2 years. It's no wonder that 500 business leaders of America are up in arms over the president's decision. Now, I'm glad that some Republicans in Congress have voiced their opposition to the president's decision, because we're going to need them to right the ship. Congress has an ability and an obligation to act, which is why we today are calling on Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell to immediately put the DREAM Act on the floor for a vote in the House and Senate. We're ready to pass it. I am confident that if put on the floor, it will garner overwhelming support from both sides of the aisle. But let us say this, and I think I speak for the leader as well. If a clean DREAM Act does not come to the floor in September, we're prepared to attach it to other items this fall until it passes. It's now my honor to turn it over to the leader of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Michelle Lujan Grisham of the great state of New Mexico, both of whose senators are here.
Thank you very much, Senator. I want to thank the Senate and the House for their incredible, fearless leadership on what I think is a hallmark issue of our time, which is making sure that American values play out productively by protecting dreamers and their families. You're going to hear it over and over and over again, because the president's decision to end DACA stands as an indefensible and unjust act of cruelty against nearly 800,000 young people who trusted the American government with their hopes, their contributions, and their dreams. Now, many of us, particularly coming from New Mexico, no stranger to the issues of immigration, no stranger to the issue of mixed status families. But I have to tell you, I remember like it was yesterday, the first time I met with dreamers over a lunch. And I really, hearing it from them directly, that they don't know that this is not their country, all right, until they apply for a driver's license, or they go to college. And in one fell swoop, everything they know to be true, a country that they believe in, that they support, that they fight for, immediately is removed from them and their entire families. Yasmin, one of my constituents, is a law school graduate who wants to be an immigration lawyer. She wasn't aware, just as I said, about her status until she applied for a driver's license. For many dreamers, in addition to having it ripped away, here's another emotion. They're ashamed. They feel their potential is capped. They feel fear from themselves. And as important, they're afraid for their parents, who risked everything to protect them and give them a better life. They feel this overwhelming burden of being undocumented. Thank you. DACA changed all that. Good idea. Perfect. It unlocked their potential. It freed them from the crippling fear of deportation. And as a result, these young patriots have been living the American dream, and their deep gratitude fueled tremendous social, as you've heard, and economic gains for cities, states, and our nation as a whole. We're fortunate to have Yasmin and her twin sister, Yasmin, a student who has taken a leave of absence from medical school to advocate for her community, and the woman who inspired her the most, her mother, who in fact saved both their lives by coming. No, I don't think that. And Carla's here from New Mexico, right on. I'm here to tell you that the president and congressional Republicans that Dreamers' lives are not bargaining chips. We should not be using them as pawns in furthering a twisted and cruel and hateful anti-immigrant agenda. Congress must and will act quickly to protect Dreamers and immigrant families from this senseless cruelty of deportation and the president's divisive mass deportation agenda. I call on my Republican colleagues, as everyone here today, to immediately bring a clean DREAM Act to the floor for a vote without delay, where we believe unequivocally it would pass both the Senate and the House. It is now my distinct honor to introduce someone that needs no introduction, someone who's long been a champion from the great state of Illinois for immigrant families, for Dreamers, for comprehensive immigration reform. It gives me great honor and great pleasure to ask Senator Durbin to give some remarks.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's an honor to be here today. President Trump told us we love Dreamers. And yesterday he announced that we love Dreamers, but we are now going to deport Dreamers. The countdown clock began yesterday with the Trump administration, a 6-month clock that says to the 780,000 who are protected by DACA, your protection is going away. The protection that keeps you in this country without fear of deportation, the protection that allows you to work. And yesterday, the Attorney General of the United States of America, sworn to uphold the Constitution and laws of this nation, announced that he would not use the power of his office to protect those who are currently in the United States under the DACA program. There was a smile on his face, and for those of us who have followed his career in the Senate, it was no surprise. He has never supported the Dreamers. He has never supported comprehensive immigration reform, and it's one of the reasons that many of us could not vote for him to be the Attorney General of the United States. The President gave him this task of making this announcement, and then he turned it over to Chris Kobach. Does the name ring a bell? Secretary of State of Kansas, and President Trump's appointment to a voter fraud commission, who said that those who are protected by DACA should leave the country. Leave the country. That's their answer. Well, I know what happened across the United States. There was a moment there when these Dreamers and their families were in tears, hugging one another, wondering what's coming next, what will be next in our future. But I know something else from my experience. When I introduced the DREAM Act and I would go to audiences in Chicago with Jan Schakowsky and Robin Kelly and Luis Gutierrez, and we would talk about the DREAM Act, the students would listen and nod their heads. I would go outside to my car, and in the darkness, as I went to get in my car, standing next to it would be 2 or 3 young people. They would look in both directions, and they would say to me very quietly, "Senator, I'm a dreamer." The reason they whispered it was because they had been raised by their families to be extremely careful. Never let anyone know who you are, where you are, that you're undocumented. That's what their first reaction was. But did you notice what happened next? The Dreamers started standing up, showing the kind of courage that all of us hope we can muster today. They stood up and said, "We are Dreamers and we're proud of it, and we want to tell you who we are." I started going to the floor of the Senate with color photographs over 100 times to tell the stories of these Dreamers, and each one of those stories really made the case for why we need to make sure that justice is served when it comes to DACA and the DREAM Act. So I stand here with the confidence that these Dreamers and their courage, their families and their courage are behind us. And now it's time for us, members of the House and Senate, to summon the courage and to fight for them and pass the DREAM Act. Are we ready to do that? Yeah. Of course we are. And I would say this to President Trump: if you love the Dreamers, help us pass the DREAM Act. I would say to the Republicans in Congress who were not swept away by the anti-immigrant rhetoric which we have heard over and over again, stand up with us and let me spell out a few of them who have and give them credit for it. First, my colleague Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, my co-sponsor of the DREAM Act. And three other Republican senators who've come forward so far deserve the credit too. Lisa Murkowski, Jeff Flake, and yesterday Cory Gardner. We need 8 more Republican senators to step up for the 60 votes we need to pass this in the Senate. But I am heartened by the fact that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have made it clear that our caucus is committed to the Dreamers, we are committed to justice, and we are demanding that we pass a clean DREAM Act this September, this year, to protect these Dreamers and generations to come. Thank you for letting me say a few words today, and let me turn it over to my friend, Congresswoman Lucille Roybal Allard. Congressman, where are you? Here you are. Take it away. Okay.
Thank you, Senator. I stand here in outrage at President Trump's unconscionable and un-American decision to destroy DACA. And I join my colleagues who are here today to declare our commitment to fight in defense of these young men and women who enrich our economy, our culture, and our society. The President's decision simply to appease his base brings shame to our country and heartbreak and fear to these young people who, regardless of their immigration status, are American in every way. His senseless and cruel decision upends their lives and the lives of their families and sends a chilling message to our immigrant communities. Terminating this program also strikes a vicious blow to our American economy by forcing hundreds of thousands of young people out of the workforce, disrupting businesses, and sending adverse shockwaves through the economies of most of our states. California alone stands to lose $11.6 million annually, and the U.S. overall stands to lose $460 billion in GDP cumulatively over the next decade. The vast majority of Americans, as we have all been told and as we know, support our nation's DACA recipients, regardless of their political affiliations. Democrats are ready to join our Republican colleagues in passing the DREAM Act of 2017, which I am proud to co-sponsor with Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Litton. This is a bipartisan, bicameral bill that will allow U.S.-raised immigrant youth to earn lawful permanent residence and a pathway to American citizenship. I, as others have said, urge all my colleagues to support the DREAM Act, and I urge Speaker Ryan to bring a clean DREAM Act to the floor without delay. Okay. And now it is my pleasure to introduce a relatively new member of the California U.S. Senate, Senator Harris.
Thank you. I'm honored to stand with my colleagues on the House and Senate side. I'd like to also mention the leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus stands here in solidarity with our Dreamers. And it should be of note that in 2010, unanimous support from the CBC for the DREAM Act. So we've got to stop playing politics with these kids. And the reality is that rescinding DACA is just simply wrong. We are talking about a population of 800,000 young people. We have 220,000 in California alone. And let's be clear about the dynamic in which we're discussing this. I've met with senior members of this administration who, when I asked, had to confess they'd never met a dreamer. How can you form such strong opinions about people you've never met, people you don't know, and then allow this population of people to be vilified? It's not only wrong, it's irresponsible. So let's get on board with the facts before we start expressing opinions about this population of people we have called dreamers. They are serving in our military. They are working in Fortune 100 companies. They are college students. They are law students. They are scientists. Let's be clear, 40% of the industry in terms of even tech in California was created by immigrants. Let's stop vilifying this population. And let's get to work also understanding that this is about not only what is morally right, it also is about what is economically right. To rescind DACA means to lose as many as 700,000 jobs in the United States because of the jobs that are created around this population. In California alone, if we rescind DACA, we will lose $11 billion. And we are looking at hundreds of billions of dollars for the economy as a whole, for taxpayers, if we rescind DACA. So there are many reasons to stand with our dreamers, including the fact that we're talking about young people who were brought here, many as toddlers. This is the only home they've known. To send them back to some country that is foreign to them, where they may not even speak the language, is just wrong. Let's give them the ability to be all that we know we are as a country, which is we are a country of dreamers. We are a country of people who know that we aspire to have a country of young people who want to develop themselves and help our country produce and be the greatest country on this earth, but we will be only if we stand by our principles and our morals and the ideals of who we are. So let's pass this. Let's get it done in September, and I thank everybody for your leadership, and Senator Durbin in particular, you. Thank you. And then Joaquin, and next, Congressman Castro.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for your inspiring words, and thank you to all of my colleagues in the Senate and in the House who are fighting on behalf of dreamers today. Let's be clear about something. America is blessed to have these 800,000 young people in our nation. This is their home. It's the only home that many of them have ever known. And as President Obama said, they're just as American as any of us, except in one way, and that's on paper. And our challenge in Congress is to make sure that that one difference is no longer. And the dreamers that are here, I want to say a message to y'all. First, thank you for your courage. Thank you for standing up when times were tough. Thank you for fighting for your families. Know that we're going to fight like hell so that you can stay here. And the reason that we have gotten to this point, the reason there was a DACA, the reason that we came close on comprehensive immigration reform was because of the incredible youth movement 10, 12 years ago and all of the energy and passion that went into it. And I'll tell you what, there are many people in Congress who are ready to do the right thing and to pass a DREAM Act, and we're going to fight to do that. But there are also folks over the last several years who have said about DACA that they agree with it, but that it should have been done legislatively. To those folks, I say, now is your chance. And to those of you that have been marching on the streets for years, some folks here are going to lead a little more inspiration. And the most powerful movements in American history have not come from the top and have not come from people in politics, but have come from people, ordinary Americans, who have changed their country for the better. So it's going to take us being out in the streets, in our churches, in our workplaces, Americans speaking out, letting politicians know how they feel. May God bless you. Thank you. And now it's my honor to introduce the senator from Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Let me just add, you've heard from my colleagues. First of all, thank you to Leader Pelosi and Schumer. Thank you to all of you for being here today and your commitment. And let me just say, because people ask me, what would you tell the dreamers and these families in your state? I would tell them, you belong here, because that's what this is about. We have all met with these members, these kids, these families in our communities. They are not numbers, they are not graphs, they are real people that are contributing in our communities. And I will tell you to a T, every single one of them that I have met with, they are working hard, they are putting themselves through school, they're paying for it, They are going home to help their parents with their jobs. They are committed to doing everything that they can to be integral part of our communities, and they are not getting recognition for that. Let me just say this. These kids are phenomenal. And the ones that I have met with are too afraid to even tell their story because they're afraid to come forward. They're afraid that when they leave that home that day, when they come home, their parents may not be there. I don't know about all of you, but I did not grow up that way. And why? Why would we put kids and families in our community who go to our churches, who are in our grocery stores, who are in our schools, who are our neighbors and our friends, why would we make them live a dual life? Why would we treat them differently? What we are doing here today is saying enough. It is time to pass the DREAM Act. It is time to talk about the benefits of immigrants in our community. I am here today because my grandfather and great-grandfathers came to this country and had the courage to come to this country, and my story is no different than anyone else's. So why do we shut the door behind us? It is time to keep that door wide open. It's time to pass this act. And let me say one final thing, which I hear constantly. There are over 12,000 dreamers in Nevada alone, and they contribute over $500 million to the state of Nevada in our economy. You've heard the statistics that if we are to deport them and their families, we are going to lose $1 billion, billions of dollars in this economy. That's why the businesses support it in my state and across this country. That's why the farmers, that's why the cattle ranchers, you name it, across this country support passing comprehensive immigration reform and keeping these families here. But let me throw this out here, because this is a misnomer and this is not a true fact. The dreamers here are contributing to our economy, and they are not depressing wages, and they are not taking away others' jobs. I'm telling you that right now. And we've got proof. In Nevada alone, not only did a Republican governor pass legislation to allow dreamers and these families to have a driver's license to get to their jobs, we passed a law to allow them to become teachers in our communities, because we know we have a teacher shortage across the country. That's what this is about. So it's time for President Trump and those men that I hear on TV to really show heart and work with us to pass the DREAM Act. It is time to stop the discrimination, the divisive rhetoric. There's no room for it in the White House. There's no room for it anywhere, and it is time to move forward. I cannot thank you all enough for being here, and thank you to my colleagues across both houses of Congress. We are going to get this done, and we are not going to stop fighting until we make this happen. So thank you for coming here today.
I thank all of our colleagues, to our distinguished visitors from the United States Senate, to my colleagues in the House. We did pass in the House the DREAM Act in 2010 under the leadership of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Today, again, under the leadership of Congresswoman Lujan Grisham, the caucus is taking the lead. But they are working with our Asian Pacific American Caucus under the leadership of Judy Chu, and the Congressional Black Caucus under the leadership of Cedric Richmond. And I do know one thing. In the Senate, they passed comprehensive immigration reform. We passed the DREAM Act. We couldn't pass each other's house. Now is the time, long overdue, to get it done. And I know if our whip, Steny Hoyer, where's Steny? Steny there? If our whip, Steny Hoyer, has his way, we will have 100% of the House Democrats voting for this. Thank you, Steny, for that. Thank you all very much.